Have you ever gone to a meeting or a presentation and you are watching the person speak and you think to yourself, that person is reading? I know they're reading. They are reading from their screen. They're reading from their notes. And I am annoyed. Has that ever happened? Or have you ever found yourself running a meeting and you're like, uh-oh, I'm not really prepared. So what if I just read? Well, let's not do that. I'm going to give you practical tips how to not sound scripted when you're speaking. Let's get to it.
Welcome to the Sam Linton Show, the podcast designed to help you shift your mindset, find your voice, and change your world. Sam is a pastor, coach, and expert communicator, helping leaders and entrepreneurs like you step into their purpose, speak with confidence, and make a lasting difference. So let's dive in.
Okay, so one of the things that I would say, if you were to put in my sphere of what people ask me with my clients, one of the things that is top of list almost every time is, Sam, I do a lot of speaking, I do a lot of presentations, I have to present data, I have to present complex things. How do I not read? Or how do I not sound like a robot? Because when I speak, even when I'm presenting complex things, I talk the way I would talk if I bumped into you at a coffee shop. Now, that's not because I'm natural. It's because I've been doing this a long time, but also it's because you have to consciously break that. And it's the hardest thing to break because you, like me, and all of us we want to get all our points across. We want to make sure that when we're speaking, we're doing so because we are competent and not because we are nervous or because we don't know what we're doing. We don't want that to be what people hear of us. So one of the biggest problems with that is we go into our talks, especially as executives, making sure that we are overly competent, but we sacrifice connection in service to sounding competent. Let me say that again. We sacrifice connection in service to sounding competent. And when we sacrifice connection, we're sunk. I mean, the boat has holes in it and it's over. So we don't want to read. We don't want to come across as stilted. You want to make sure that when you're speaking, people feel like you're having a conversation with them. One of the greatest things that you will ever hear as a compliment is someone that tells you they felt like you were speaking just to them. I feel like you were just talking to me. Like, I feel like that whole presentation, that whole meeting, you were just focused on me. And that means you did a good job. So how do we do this? What do we do? Okay, I'm going to give you five Senko practical fixes. 5 fixes, all right, that are going to get you in the realm where you're feeling confident to speak, but not so competent that you sound like a robot. We're not going to do that. All right. So first thing, when you're preparing, you want to prepare to speak and not to read. When you're preparing, when you're getting your content down, you want to prepare to speak and not to read. So I'll give you an example. I'm an author. I've written 5 novels and 2 nonfiction Christian books. And when I am writing those novels, or when I'm writing those Christian books, they are written in a way that is to read. They're designed to read. They're designed to be read, especially the Christian books. Now, when I teach, which I have, on the content of the Christian books, I'm not reading any of that. Like, I have the concepts, the principles, but I'm not going to regurgitate what I wrote in the book. Instead, I'm going to have a conversation around those principles. Now, writing a novel, writing fiction, that's a different ballgame because now we're into drama and tone and pacing. That's a whole different thing. But you're here because you're dealing with speaking, and that would land itself in the nonfiction category. Now, what we do when we prepare is we will write down our notes as if they are going to be ingested through reading and not as if people are going to hear it through you speaking. Let me explain. If you go and you purchase, and you can, speeches, or you can actually purchase, and I've never done this because I always feel like when I'm preaching somebody else's sermon, I feel like it's like trying to put somebody else's pajamas on. Like you're dealing with somebody on their intimate. I love ideas from preachers. I will take them like, oh, that's a good idea. But by the time I have their idea and I've worked it through, it becomes my own. But you can buy sermons. You can purchase lists of sermons. You can purchase different things that you can use to speak. And you can do that. But the sermons are written to read. So if you get up and preach those, you're going to sound very much like you're reading. You're going to sound like you're reading a manuscript. Now, the reason why is because they're written and they're transcribed as if to be read. So what you need to do is you need to make the language less buttoned up and more buddy. Less buttoned up and more buddy. So you want to use language that would be as if we are talking. So welcome. Today we are going to be addressing 3 common areas about our budget. In those 3 areas, we will cover them, blah, blah, blah. And, right off the bat, it sounds like I'm reading. But instead, if I started the conversation, I'm like, hey, for the next 30 minutes, we got 3 things to cover. We're going to look at the budget. We're going to take a look at the different ways that we maybe hit the mark. And then we're going to look at maybe different ways things that we could do next time to make us even perform better. All right. Now, if you look at the first one on paper, you will find that it is completely grammatically perfect. We are covering these 3 things, A, B, C, blah, blah, blah. All right. But the second one, it's filled with sentence fragments. It's filled with contractions. It is talking. It is prepared as if to talk. And I'll tell you how the preparation looks in the next part. But so you want to, right off the bat, break that you're not manuscripting. Now, I will tell you, again, mostly what I've dealt with is preachers. And because preachers are preaching for 30 to 50 minutes at times, they will often manuscript their talks. I used to do that. I don't do it anymore. Now, but for most of us, when we're speaking, we're not going to be manuscripting. You don't want to be doing that. You want to look at just like really sentence fragments and trying to get those thoughts down. All right. So you want to make sure that you are writing to speak and not to read. All right. So that's the first thing. Second one, bloop, 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 bloop. Bullet points and single words. Let me say it again for the people in the back. Bullet points and single words. You're like, okay, so that means we can't have any notes? I'm not saying that. Especially if you speak all the time, if you're like a regular, ongoing, running meetings, doing presentations all the time. If you have one talk and you say that talk like 30 times a year, you could probably get away with no notes. Most of us need some sort of notes. Now, I've got it, for me, down to a handful of notes. But a lot of people, they take binders. Remember the Trapper Keepers? Do you remember the Trapper Keepers from the 90s? Like where you'd be able to put like stuff in folders, and it had like a pencil area. Then it had like the little folders on the end things. Then it had the places where you could actually put the binder, put the 3-hole punched paper. All right. Well, I always would be like a document hoarder. And I would make sure I had all my homework, I had all the things to study, and I'd be overpacked. Like, so my Trapper Keeper, it was like breaking, the seams were ripping, the thing wouldn't close anymore, I'd get poked with it because it was coming out. Not so good, all right, not so good. Well, that's exactly the way most people that are uncomfortable speaking prepare. They overbring Linus's blanket up there. They're bringing all of the stuff, everything, including the kitchen sink. We're going to bring it all. We have to make sure we have our notes. We have to make sure we have our outlines. We have to make sure we have our explanations. We have to make sure it's scripted. We have to make sure the slides are blah, 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 blah. So the simple solution that I have to this is bullet points and single words. Bullet points and single words. So when you are doing notes, you are going to never again write full sentences. You're not reading them unless you have a quote. Like if you're quoting George Washington or Ernest Hemingway or any contemporary like Lady Gaga. I don't know if you would quote Lady Gaga. I don't know what she's saying, like something in there. You would need to put the quote because you're quoting a person. But for the most part, your particular points should not be scripted out. You want to use bullet points, like you might say bullet point, illustration, snow. That's what I'll have. Like in my sermon next week, there's a bullet point, illustration, blank. Okay, so I have the illustration. Now, I look at that and I know that that little bullet point with that one word, that represents maybe 5 minutes of talking. Now, if I scripted that out, we're talking pages, right? So I don't have that kind of space. But on top of that, the more that I write down, the more I'm going to have to memorize to deliver. And I'm going to feel uncomfortable. If I look at this long, lofty paragraph, I'm not going to deliver it because I'm going to feel like I have to read it. What if I miss? What if I do this? What if I do that? What if I do this? And then we lose that connection, right? So bullet points. Next, single words. So instead of you with 1,000 sentences or 1,000 bullet points with 6 to 12 words per bullet point, I'm going to throw a suggestion out there to just do single words. Start off with open, seesaw. Next, what I'm showing. Next, gambling. All right. So whatever those keywords are, the key is they have to be meaningful to you. So you can't write the word the, or you can't write the word open if you don't know what that is. Usually one word will jog, or a couple words will jog your mind. They'll jog your memory. Think about how powerful this is in songs that we listen to. I'm trying to think of a song offhand that might be relatable. So if I started here and I was like, life is you're going to say, highway, and I want to ride it. Okay, so I might, if I were to read that as a speech, I would write life is dash, okay? I don't have to sit there and go, life is a highway. I want to ride it all night long. All night long. Like, I'm not scripting that out. Like, I need that life is that's going to jog my memory. And that's the way it is when you're speaking too. So you do budget numbers. And let's say you're doing really, really particular granular things, especially as an executive. You have to know those numbers. You might put in there, okay, you might start by saying Q1, not good, 75.2%, whatever. Now, that should be enough to get you to go, okay, Q1, we didn't perform the way that we thought we would. In previous first quarters, we were way ahead of the curve. This year, we are underperforming. In fact, we've actually declined by 75.1%. All right, now, again, you've seen those little dots. I was able to make this long thing out of those couple words and an explanation. But notice I have the key points and the things that are hard to remember. 75.5% might be difficult. Now, if you've tanked 75.5%, I would probably say sell the business at that point. But you just want to make sure that you use those words as anchors. I've said this before, but when I work with people, I just worked with somebody in overhauling their workshop. One of the things that I recommend is that you use a note card. And you limit your notes to a single note card. You want to limit your notes to a single note card. Why is this? Well, it's because you actually are able to allow that note card to restrict your notes. You can let that space be completely restricted and go, okay, I can put everything on this 2x5 note card. Like, this is what I can do. And so that'll help you. If you bullets and single words, put it on a note card, you're even more constricted. Like, okay, this is all I can do. I've had people that do 8-hour programs, and I've trained them to do 8-hour programs, and I'll say, throw it on a note card. And I'll say, look, if you're doing an 8-hour program, you get one note card for hour 1 through 4, 1 through 4, one note card for hours 5 through 8. There you go. I'm generous like that. I'm like the note card genie. You get 2. But you don't want to script out everything and make the note card look like it's, you have to need a magnifying glass, but one to open. Salisbury steak, exercise, blank, whatever. Whatever it matters to you. People should be able to pick your note card up and go, I have no idea what this dude is going to do. This is weird. That's good. That means that you need to know what it is. It's not something that anyone else could read. So bullet points, single words. All right. Next of all, rehearse like a speaker, not like a writer. All right. Now, this is similar to the first part, write to speak, not to read. But you want to rehearse like a speaker, not like a writer. So here's how that would look. Unfortunately, when we are preparing, we have to prepare on these computers. We're using AI, we are, using slides, we have screen, and we're usually sitting on our duffs watching screens. And then we're like, oh, I've been studying. Well, you haven't practiced anything. So one of the things that I do, and this is unconventional, but when I'm speaking, what I will do is I'll actually just verbal process what I'm about to say. So I'll go, okay, I know I got an open, and I'm going to talk about that. And I'll just start speaking as I'm speaking to the audience. Like, hey, you know what? One time me and my mom were at a chorus concert, and it had an ice storm, and nobody could get their cars, and we had to walk home, and we were sliding in the ice. Like, I start to verbal process, and I speak it to practice the speaking and not to practice, like, getting all the words down. And I start to tell the story like a storyteller and not like somebody that's a writer. Again, I'm practicing and rehearsing like a speaker and not like a writer. So I'm trying to get it down. Remember, writers are writing to get the content right and to make sure the pacing, the tone, the language. Speakers are making connections. If you're speaking, if you're giving a presentation, you're there to make a connection. If you're there to regurgitate writing, you're not making a connection. That could have been an email, bro. Hate to break the news. It could have been an email. So I saw a reel today. This will probably get me in trouble. This is a commercial break. But it was a guy that was saying, my wife has stayed at home and raised the kids for the last 8 years, and she's amazing at it. So he was talking about, I believe that being a stay-at-home mom, this comedian, he goes, is a full-time job. I really do. He said, so I really believe, I treat my wife like she has a full-time job. So when I come home and the kids haven't put their dishes away from lunch, she gets written up for that. And then he goes on to say, like, when I tell her that something needs done and she doesn't do it, then we have to have a meeting with HR and we have to talk about her performance. And then he made the joke that when she says that she's upset about something, I will look at her and say, could this have been an email instead of a conversation? Now, of course, I would never suggest any of you do that, but that's exactly what happens when you are preparing to write and not to speak. So you're practicing normally, like, okay, today we're going to talk about these 25 things and blah, 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 blah. Instead of just like, hey, we got a lot to cover today, folks. I mean, we're going to be all over the map, and this is what we're looking at, and boom, like you just get into it and speak. So you want to rehearse. So the rehearsal, the verbal processing side will actually get you comfortable with speaking. Then you're unconsciously going to start to work on the things that are actually most important about speaking, which are connection, body language, eye contact, humor, things that we've been talking about. But if you're just worried about getting those words right from your 25-page manuscript about your 30-minute meeting, you ain't going to cover any of that stuff. You're not going to worry about how you're connecting. You're not going to worry about humor. You're not going to worry about any of that. So you want to rehearse like you are speaking, not like you are writing. All right? Okay, next. You want to make sure that you are paying attention. You see how these things lend themselves to each other? You want to make sure that you are paying attention to how you speak. So you want to use your face, your body language, and your tone to help you with the presentation. Now, you're only going to be able to do this if you're not obsessed with the content. Like, do you see what I did right there? Now, I'm not to get too meta, but I stopped and I said, you're only going to do this if you're not obsessed with the content. That was emphasis on certain words. But it's because what I'm looking at on the screen is a list of bullet points. I didn't go, ooh, okay, at minute 17, make sure you say you're going to emphasize these words. I don't script that because I'm just being me. I'm trying to make this just me. So you're listening like we're having a conversation. And so you're only going to do that if you're preparing to speak and not to read. So you want to utilize things like facial expressions, body language. If you're doing that when you are presenting, people are going to know this person's not reading. They're looking at me. They're examining me. Like they're actually like, they're smiling when I'm smiling. They're nodding at me. Maybe they'll even use my name. Holy moly, they're using my name in their presentation. Wow. How are they remembering that on top of all the notes? Because they're not using notes. They're spending more time being present. They're spending more time understanding who they're speaking to. Now, again, all this can go out the window. Sometimes if you're doing a political speech or whatever, you're not asking for audience involvement. If you're preaching a sermon, a lot of times, I've done it. You can do it a little bit, but you're not saying like, hey, whoever does this, let's stand. Let me hear from you. Like you could try it, but in some forums, it's okay to speak consistently. But you definitely want to pay attention to your body language. You definitely want to pay attention to how you're speaking. You want to make sure that those things are not forgotten and forsaken, because otherwise people will turn you off. They're not going to pay attention to you. Okay, your voice should sound more animated. I once was coaching one of my clients, and he and I were talking, and this guy was so, oh my gosh, he was charismatic. He was really, really good with his people. Like I saw him interact a little bit with his wife over the phone, and he just really, really, every time you would talk to him, you're like, I want to go have dinner with this dude. I want to go get coffee with this guy. Like, he's fun. His kids probably love him. His wife's crazy about him, all these things. So every time he would get up to speak, he became Presentation Peter. He would just stand there and be like, today we are here to discuss the climate of blah, blah, blah company for blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, who is this? And he's like, I'm an executive. I make a lot of money. I'm like, dude, that guy sucks. Don't let him talk. Bring the guy that was just FaceTiming your daughter up here. Bring him and make those faces. Bring the guy that was just making jokes with the person in the hall that didn't change the coffee, in the hotel where we were at, in the the banquet area that we were doing the presentations in. Like, go talk about how you talk to him. Talk like that. And he's like, well, that's just like when I'm goofing off. That's not who I am when I'm presenting. I'm like, you need to become more like when you're goofing off, because people are going to listen to that guy. This guy, Presentation Peter, his name wasn't Peter, by the way. I protect the anonymity of my clients. No one wants to listen to Presentation Peter. They're like, just give me this. Put this in 11 Labs and send it to me over AI. I don't want to listen to this. I have no interest. None. All right. So you want to pay attention to your face, your body language, your energy, your tone, all those things. Last, and most certainly not least, and this is going to be the part that all of you have a question about. And this is something that I've kind of adopted that's a Sam thing, but I assure you it's not unique. And I'm going to keep referring to this throughout a lot of these podcasts because it's so vital. You're going to say, well, I have to speak my notes because I can't memorize. I'm not a good memorizer. I have like the Finding Nemo, the Dory. I have her memory. I can't remember my talk. I can't remember my points. I get that. So the last thing, if you're struggling like I have to read, is you want to speak from buckets and not from printed notes. Buckets and not printed notes. Now, this is more on the preparation side, but this is the only way that you're going to feel comfortable doing it. And let me explain. You want to organize and categorize your talk in buckets, not in sentences. So, for example, you have an opening bucket, and that's like the first 5 minutes of your talk. Okay, just picture like a big black bucket, and you have the label opening. So you're going to throw things in there that might go to the bucket. Like, I make a joke. You put right joke about the weather in Pittsburgh. Incidentally, just so you know, one of the jokes I always make is that Pittsburgh can boast that it gets approximately 0.1 inches more rain a year than Seattle, Washington. Like, how cool is that? Everybody's worried about Pittsburgh sports, but Pittsburgh actually is wetter and rainier and nastier than Seattle, Washington. So boom. So I'll make that joke. I might write in there, and that bucket goes 0.1 more than Seattle, Washington. I might write in there, letting them know if I'm doing something formal with a lot of people, I might have to let them know where the restrooms are. I might have to let them know when lunch is going to be served. If you're doing like a big event like that, you kind of have to do what I call housekeeping stuff. So I'll put housekeeping junk, throw it in the bucket. And I organize my talk in that bucket, and I would call that the opening bucket. And when I practice, I'm only practicing what's in that bucket. So today I'm working on the opening bucket. I'm working on this. So I rehearse like I'm speaking just from that bucket. Then I move into the content. So let's go into the content. So let's say we get into the first section. So one of my first sections, if you are my client, and by the way, I'd love for you to be my client, podcast@samuellinton.com, podcast@samuellinton.com. I have some openings that are coming up in the fall. Really, really awesome group of clients I'm working with. I would love to get you into one of those slots. But when I'm working with clients, the first thing I cover is confidence. And the framework I shared a couple months ago, I think it is now, or a couple weeks ago, about how to borrow confidence. And I get them to list, so I might write in there confidence borrowing. And that's all I'm writing for that bucket. And then I write practice confidence, write down confidence. So I'll have that in there. And so I put them in the bucket, and I'm only practicing for that day. I'm just practicing what's in that bucket. I'm talking about, the confidence bucket, what this looks like. And I'm putting it in there in a bucket so that way I can feel confident getting that bucket down and not this whole long talk. Remember, when I'm presenting, a lot of times I will do a workshop and it's 8 hours of speaking. Now, I don't know how your brain works, but I can't memorize 8 hours of scripts. No. But I can remember 6 buckets. Oh, you better believe it. You don't have to remember everything about the day. You just have to remember what the title is of your bucket and kind of practice the components of that bucket. This is how comedians do a 60-minute set. I've talked about this before. But comedians, they will do bits. Their bits are my buckets. Their bits are my buckets. So a comedian will go, okay, that's the bit about the flight attendant. And they write flight attendant. And they'll work that bit out. They'll practice with somebody else. Like, hey, I'll talk about the flight attendant that, I said, hey, can I have the whole can of Dr. Pepper? And she's like, you're not in first class. You're getting the thimbleful of Dr. Pepper that everybody in Coach is. Like, I'm going to write that down. And then it doesn't work. Okay, you're getting the shot glass full of Dr. Pepper that everybody else does. Whatever. So they practice those bits until the bits are so ingrained. Then you see them on Netflix and they have a 60-minute set. They're not looking at notes. They're completely polished because they've practiced those bits every single day in one way, shape, or form. They've worked those bits out. So now they have like 10 or 15 bits threaded together that make a 60-minute Netflix special. No different when you're doing a presentation. You just work on the buckets and put them in the buckets. And then once you know the buckets, then you feel comfortable like, I got to shift to this bucket. I got to grab stuff out of this bucket. And the buckets become your outlines. But you're not reading a script. You're looking at the bucket and go, I got to do the open bucket. I got to do the illustration with Stanley's family bucket. I got to do the losing my keys at Walmart bucket. Whatever it is. And you work that bit out, and then you're not feeling like you have to memorize, because now what you've done is you have effectively made that content your own and allowed it to become natural. So now you're not reading it, you're just regurgitating what's already inside of you. And it sounds like we're having a conversation instead of you presenting. So, how is this going to work for you? Think about it. A couple things. Get your words and your scripts into bullet points. AI will help you. So if you got, I got manuscripts, and manuscripts going to take an hour, ChatGPT will do it for you in like 2 minutes. 2 minutes, yeah, like 2 seconds. It'll give you the bullets. You just tell it, hey, I want to organize these into bullet talks. Can you help me? Take a look at how you appear when you are reading versus how you appear when you're talking. Are you being presentation Peter and coming out, or presentation Petunia if you're a lady and you're getting up and you are doing that? Or are you talking to your neighbor and you're fun and you're friendly and you're playing with the dog? That's who you want to be. Otherwise, you're going to sound like you're reading and you're not. And also, keep in mind your body language, your tone of voice, all of that. Make sure you spend more time on how you say what you say than just on what you're saying. So, with that said, this is the Sam Linton Show. Shift your mindset. Find your voice. Let's change our world, shall we? Until next time.